We're ready to start our meeting. I'm gonna call to order tonight's meeting of the Youth Commission, this November 4th, 2025, and it's 6:33 p.m. We're gonna start by reviewing and approving meeting minutes from October 14th, 2025. Did anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes? No food? I second. All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. 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 Okay, and we do have a vacancy on the commission. Laura Chioco had to move off the commission. I don't know if we have anything else to say on it, except to let you know that and interested. If anyone's interested, we can start recruiting.
We did include in the meeting packet a flyer for anyone to use to share with the community regarding that vacancies.
Okay. So to the highlight of the meeting, the director's report.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through the director's report this evening, but it is in the meeting packet, and we can defer it to the next meeting for any review, if that's okay.
Yes.
Are we good to move on?
Yes, we are good to move on.
Okay, great. Thank you all for coming. I don't know here if I stand here, I'm visible. Yes. My name is Sarah Castle. I'm the director of Southborough Youth and Family Services. This is a little bit of a different youth commission meeting for us this evening. So thanks to those of you who are here in attendance and for those of you who are attending online. I just have a few comments that I want to make at the top of our presentation. Thank you for being here. It's been an absolute privilege to be part of this project. I want to start by thanking our select board for supporting this project with ARPA funding. The select board is a hardworking, dedicated group of people who truly care about this community and the needs of the community. And although they're not able to be here, they actually have a meeting this evening as well across town. I'm planning to attend their December 2nd meeting to share the final report and give a high-level overview of the results. I want to also say thank you to the Youth Commission for helping to promote this assessment for months, for participating themselves, for encouraging members of our community to participate, and to the entire Southborough community for persevering through all of our advertising. We showed up at the transfer station in the rain, trying to get people to complete surveys, and did a variety of focus groups, and we really were so encouraged by the enthusiasm people showed in participating. And kudos to all of you for being so invested in your own community. I do want to take a minute to recognize our program coordinator, Emily Brideau. Emily had been working in our department all of 2 days when I asked her to take the lead on many parts of this project. She immediately rose to the challenge with energy, enthusiasm, professionalism, and an area of expertise that we really appreciated. So I'm deeply grateful for her efforts and the commitments she made throughout this project. In a moment, I will introduce you to Kendall and Michael from Trendline. They are an absolute pleasure to work with, and their partnership and expertise have really been invaluable throughout this process. I've had the personal opportunity to work with them on a few other projects through our Substance Use Prevention Coalition, Encompass, and I'm really thrilled to introduce them to you this evening. As we come together tonight to review these findings, I just want to take a moment to recognize the importance of this topic on community needs. We're living in a time when more and more people are reaching out for support, connection, and stability, and looking for help with basic needs such as housing and food. These challenges touch not only the lives of Southborough residents, but also the departments and staff in our human service departments in Southborough that are working very hard to respond, often to people who are coming from outside of our community looking for help. This community needs assessment isn't just about numbers and data, although that's a big piece of it and what we're going through this evening. But it's about listening, understanding, and using what we learn to strengthen our community. It's about making sure that no one falls through the cracks and that Southborough remains a place where we can help people and give them the hope that they need. The insights that we gather in this effort will guide not just our department's work, but serve as a valuable resource for all Southborough's human service departments and partners. Thank you for being a part of this effort to ensure that Southborough remains a place where every resident has the opportunity to be heard, supported, and well. And with that, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Kendall and Michael, and I'm going to invite you guys to join us in.
That was a much better intro than we had planned. So thank you for covering that.
At your clicker, you want me to operate the clicker? Oh,
I have.
it's like, oh, it's just the bathroom.
Please. Thanks for the intro, Sarah, and thank you, Emily, and thanks to all of you for trusting us with this very important project. We've been exploring the ins and outs of Southborough now for about 9 months or so. We've been talking with Sarah and Emily for maybe almost a year or coming up on it. So we've been around a little bit, but tonight we want to share with you some of our initial findings. We want this to be a two-way conversation because 9 months, feels like a long time to me, but it's really not enough time to understand everything there is to understand about this town. So we want some feedback, and we're going to work in some ways throughout the presentation for you to give us some feedback. But before we do that, let me tell you who we are.
Oh. Maybe you're supposed to use the other one.
No, it works. I don't know. Anyway, so over there, that's Kendall. I'm Michael. Kendall started Trendline. Well, she started doing some consulting work, I'd say, in 2017 for a local youth substance use coalition in Stoughton. A couple of years later, she asked me to join her on one particular project for, I think it was the town of Canton. And that pretty much became a permanent arrangement, and we formed Trendline in
COVID. Yeah, little COVID project.
In COVID, which is several years, as you know. So all you need to really take away from this slide is that Kendall is a data analyst. She does the math, and then I figure out how to tell you about the math in a way that makes some sort of sense. That pretty much covers who we are. And we are a pleasure to work with, by the way.
Can you guys hear him okay?
Yes.
I screamed, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't,
I just
It's just for
it's not a huge room.
any speaker's knowledge, I'm looking on the Zoom. If you go past the Southborough flag, you
Yeah.
won't be on the camera.
Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah, you have a-
just
it's a- you have
stay
a limited
within,
range there.
you're like in it right now, so where you're standing.
Am I
is fine.
blocking your
That's
view
fine.
of it?
I've seen this already.
on the
That's a
screen.
good point. I'm gonna try
I can
to.
also move over there.
I might end up back there at some point.
Okay.
I tend to get fidgety. So let's talk about how the project went step by step. As I said, we've been around for a while. We've visited Southborough a few times. I actually had lunch at Moro's down the street one day, had a very nice bacon cheeseburger, very large.
That's not healthy.
Well, it was on the menu. It spoke to me. Sat at the counter, had a nice tea, very nice. Everyone was very
Got
nice.
to know the town.
I got to know that I felt like I knew the town. 45 minutes. So we begin projects like this with a public data review. So we're looking at any type of data that's publicly available, whether it's state or town or school or everything in census, anything in between, so we can try to get an idea of what this place is like in a very analytical sense. And then we begin to collect qualitative data. So we do one-on-one key informant interviews, we run focus groups, and we launched the often advertised infamous community survey that I'm sure you heard about many times. And that runs for several months. We can collect a lot of responses, and we did. Toward the end of that process, we sort of take a pause and we try to figure out how to make sense of all this different data. Does the qualitative match the quantitative? Does the publicly available data match what's actually happening on the ground in the town at Morrow's or right here? And then when we sort of put those puzzle pieces together, we come to you on a night like tonight and we show you what we have, and then we ask for some final feedback before we set any of this in stone come December 2nd, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. Okay, definitely. And then you'll have a final report that will be yours forever and for you to act on. So here's a little more detail about how we got here and what our approach is. That community survey we talked about, 345 survey participants. That's more than 3% of this town's population. 3% sounds like a small number. It is not. That's a really good sample. It's better than a lot of bigger city. We were just telling Sarah about a larger city we worked with about 10 times the size of this. Just a few dozen responses, not good. So 345 is great. That's good data. We had 11 key informant interviews from different sectors and different parts of the town. We conducted 8 focus groups with 54 different participants total in those focus groups. And as the data came in, we started to categorize it into these 4 areas on the right side of your screen. Community health needs, that's a really broad subject matter. A lot of things can fit into there. We felt like these 4 areas encompassed the majority of what we'd want to know. They're important things that are affecting the town, affecting many towns, not just this one. And they also leave a little bit of room to sort of reveal emerging needs that maybe we hadn't thought of. So before I turn things over to Kendall, I just want you to keep in mind a few things as we work through the night. You have some placemats in front of you. We're calling them placemats because it's kind of what they look like.
It'd be ridiculous to call it a handout.
Yeah, that's not a handout because you need 2 hands. So it's a hands out at the very least. I don't know.
There is definitely plenty you can take some home, but we do want you to put some notes on it that we want to keep. So you can keep on, we keep on.
Yeah, so you've probably already glanced at it and you might be reading things and saying to yourself, like, man, we already do this. Why are they making a recommendation about this thing that we already do? And it's been in town forever. If that's the way you're feeling about any of the recommendations as we talk through them, we want you to first think, does anyone know that you're doing it? Because what we've encountered a lot, and you'll hear us repeat this as the night goes on, is that a lot of good things are happening in town and people just aren't quite sure what they are. And if you say to yourself, well, we're already doing this and we have a lot of people coming to use this service and you guys are dead wrong, we want you to raise your hand and tell us about it, because if you don't tell us now, it's going in the report, and once it's in the report, we can't undo the report. So now it's kind of your last chance to tell us that we're wrong. We want you to tell us that we're wrong. So
And that's why we gave you a little box in
there are
each section.
boxes.
What do we miss? Like, and you can get real specific, like, we have this great dance pro, whatever. You can be as specific as you want in there.
Yes, or use the stickies or whatever you want. Just make sure we hear about it before we leave tonight. The second thing, you're going to hear a lot of common themes throughout the night. You're going to hear about health infrastructure, affordability, transportation, silos, mental health. And you're going to stay at in 20 minutes, you're going to be like, oh my God, they're going to talk about silos again. And that's fair. But the things that keep coming up, the things that we keep repeating, those are the topics that sort of transcend these 4 categories. And if something transcends all 4 categories, that means it's really important. And we're going to repeat it with a purpose. And it's because those are the things that you should probably be looking at first, unless we're wrong, and you'll tell us. And then finally, been through this a lot of times, so Correlation does not equal causation. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that appear to be correlated, things that appear to sort of move in the same direction together. As many times as I've tried to let Kendall tell me that I can say correlation does equal causation, it does not. So if I can't say it, you can't say it. Just know correlation does not equal a causal relationship. And with that, Kendall, let's tell these very nice people about their own town.
Okay, that sounds great. I would love to tell you about your own town. I'm sorry, I do hate using the notes, but there's too many numbers to keep straight, and Michael gets upset if I got the numbers wrong, so it's very embarrassing. So just a general community profile, some of the stuff that stuck out to us when we first looked at your quantitative data. So we go on the census, we go on the American Community Survey. There's a lot of amazing publicly available data. When I started doing this, I couldn't dream of getting like Southborough level data. Like that did not exist, but there was like this advancement called small area estimates in the way that statisticians do math, and it allowed us to get like town level or census tract level data, which is like extremely cool for a person like me. But it allows us to get like Southborough level data for a lot of stuff. I know after COVID, everyone's like expecting live numbers and live data about their town all the time, because we were like getting those dashboards every week and the wastewater numbers, and everybody kind of got used to that. But it is really exciting to be able to look at some of this stuff for like the first time. So the first number that we have on here is what's called like a senior dependency ratio. This does not mean seniors are dependent. This does not mean anything like that. It just says kind of looking at what's the ratio of seniors to working age people. And so the senior population in Southborough has grown by about 40% in the past 10 years. That's big. That is not different than Massachusetts, which has grown 36%. So it's common everywhere. It is how the generations work. Michael and I actually argue about this for quite a while, but that number is going to sort of slow down. It's going to continue to grow, but at a less acceleration, right? So I think it's supposed to grow 20% more by 2030. No, by 2020, by 2025, because that was estimate at the time. And then it will kind of slow down, and actually it will start to back off a little bit in 10 years. So something certain to know. However, the amount of seniors in the town of Southborough is incredibly low compared to local communities. That's something I would love for you all to kind of chew on. This is what Michael and I were disagreeing about. From what I was hearing, I was kind of wondering if it was affordability, being able to age in place successfully. Does the kind of infrastructure match with like what's going to work for someone as they age, which is something that of course should be a priority. You want to keep your residents here. And then on the other side of that, we see a complete flip with the child dependency ratio, which is the exact same thing. It's the number of children for working age adults, which is huge compared to the state of Massachusetts. You guys have so many families and so many kids here, which is very impressive. The county is 31%. 44% of your households have kids under the age of 18. The county is 31%, the state is 29%. So you are way above the people around you in terms of how many kids you have. And then the population less than 18 years old, again, you have a much higher rate than the county and then the state. And then we have this little fact here, 41% of married couple households have children under the age of 18, and that's double county and state averages. So you guys are a family friendly community, which is a great thing to see for sure. It also does tend to show that it can be difficult to not have the resources of a large family in this community, right? To not be a married coupled household could be more difficult if that's what the majority is. All right, so we have 21% of Southborough is foreign born population, which is much higher than the surrounding community. So I think that's really great to see that you have such a welcoming community to people who come from many different places, and it was many different places. And 21% of residents moved to Southborough from another state, which is also really interesting. So people love to relocate here. 56% of the foreign born population we have in Southborough have immigrated from Asia, and 22% of households speak a language other than English at their home. But almost everybody speaks English well or very well. So it's kind of very interesting to look at that. We don't typically see that, whereas you have people speaking languages other than English at home, but 94% of your community speaks English very well, which is great to see. But certainly does lend itself to making sure that things are translated, accessible in all sorts of languages. I don't need to tell you guys this, Southborough is highly educated and has a strong median household income. That doesn't mean that everybody is highly educated. That doesn't mean everybody has a strong median household income or a strong household income. But it does mean that overall, that's what we have. So getting into our first section, I just want to say that kind of like, I'm going to try, let me give it back to you.
Absolutely.
Just the general, so you guys know what we're going to go with here is we have 4 sections, as Michael highlighted. We're going to go through each section. We're going to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about it. And then we're actually going to do a little ranking exercise just to see if, you know, what we said, what do you feel is important and what kind of falls to the bottom of the list in terms of what we said. And we'll do that 4 times. We'll probably start a little slower and then I'm sure we'll pick up speed as you all get kind of fatigued of hearing the same things that come up as themes over and over again. So Michael will start us off.
Great. So we're gonna start every section with this with a set of opportunities in each category. And then we're going to sort of back up and tell you how we got there before we do some ranking on our phones, which is going to be really fun. And then Kendall will go over some of the recommendations that we have in those sections. So I'll run through each of these really quickly, and then we'll move on to some of the data that supports it. You'll hear us talk a lot tonight about health infrastructure. That's another really broad term, but it can mean anything from like a hospital or a clinic or an urgent care center to bike paths and transportation. Health infrastructure is a broad term. It encompasses a lot of social determinants of health. And right here in the community, unfortunately, it's lacking. And I'm realizing as I say this, you know what, as an aside, Kendall decided who was going to do what slides, and I'm going to come off as the bad guy tonight. I just want that to be clear. So she's going to come off as the hero at the end, and I'm going to be the bad guy, and that's how this is all arranged. It's not my fault. That's how she planned it.
I have to do extra back on.
I'm realizing that in the moment that I have to do all the bad slides that we call them opportunities, but they're kind of challenges, is really what they are. The next thing is the high cost of living. Kendall just showed you the this is a town with high median incomes, high home prices, high everything prices, right? And so for the small bit of the population that are not high earners, that makes it sort of compounds the issue, and it makes it extremely difficult to live day to day. Mental health is a topic that came up over and over and over and over again when we talked to focus groups and key informants, and even on our community survey that I'll show you in a minute. The actual, some of the quantitative data we collected doesn't dispel that notion, but it doesn't totally support it either. There's, I think, some mixed data there, and we're curious to hear from you later on sort of how you view it. But that's an interesting topic to dig into, and it's a hot topic pretty much in every community that we've worked with. Very similar to high cost of living. Housing, the high cost of housing, it puts it out of reach again on the ends of the age spectrum, right? So your older adults who are looking to retire comfortably, and your younger families who are trying to support multiple kids with multiple incomes if they can. The high cost of housing makes it really difficult to do that. Community gathering spaces are less. So we heard a lot from key informants and focus groups about the lack of public spaces for people to gather in and be social and connect. And that's one that has like a pretty big ripple effect when you talk about youth mental health and getting kids off their phones and social isolation and breaking down barriers and stigma. Community spaces to gather, that's a really sort of basic way to break some of that down and to implement some solutions. And then finally, it's hard to get around this place. I grew up in the smallest town in Rhode Island. So I know
Smallest town in the smallest state.
the smallest town in the smallest state,
Okay.
I couldn't miss that
Foster.
Well,
Smallest,
Mainland.
smallest contiguous, yeah.
No.
Good call.
She fact checked you.
Good call. What? Look at you, I'm going a couple
Are you one of
weeks.
those Southborough residents that moved from out of state?
I was a long-term Southborough resident who moved to the next town,
Oh,
but I do know the smallest town in Rhode Island is not on the mainland.
That's true. We're talking,
credibility out the window.
Right away, put that on a sticky note or something. But it's kind of tough to get around here. It's 15 square miles. It's rural. It's spread out. Route 9 is a horror show. The last few times we've come here, especially like when the sun is setting and you got to make a U-turn or you've got to find one of those weird exits that's not really an exit, is it? And people honk at you and you can't.
We got honked at 2 times on the way here.
I gotta tell you, it's not okay. It's tough to get around, and if you don't drive or if you're looking to walk somewhere or take a bike, there's just not a lot of options for you, and a lot of times mobility equals access, and it's just not here. So that's an opportunity we're going to look at. Okay, so how did we get to some of this information? And how did when you see a slide like this for the rest of the presentation, I believe. With the big blue numbers, this is data from the community survey with 345 responses that was so heavily advertised in your face at the transfer station.
And that's what.
Props,
I think.
props. So 76% of all of our survey takers rated their overall health as good or excellent. This is the first time I'm going to have to check myself and remind myself that correlation does not equal causation, but we did see higher educational attainment and higher incomes saw people rating their own health higher and better. So that's something to keep in mind. We're going to look at that a little more on the next slide too. But so we had 76% was the overall number. For people without a college degree, the number becomes 67%. For people making under $80,000, the number becomes 62%. If you have a graduate degree, the number becomes 82%. If you make more than $100,000, the number becomes 81%. And we can click and toggle all those little filters on and off all day, but that's what keeps happening. We have this correlation that is not causal, maybe, but it could be. So 49% of respondents said that housing was the top challenge facing Southborough residents. Number one, we gave them a list of like 8 things. They picked housing number 1. 49%. Seniors put it at 60%. Okay, so it's top of mind for people age 65 plus. Mental health was number 2 at 45%. No other option was even in the ballpark, even close, even worth talking about at the moment. Speaking of mental health, so we had 28% of survey takers tell us that they had themselves a mental health challenge in the last 12 months. 34% female respondents and 42% were under age 45. So there's a sort of an age and gender gap there when you talk about experiencing mental health challenges. Yep, that's that for now. Here is a little more about that disparity in income when it comes to overall health rating. So on the top, we have the sort of the spread for overall health rating for all 345 people who took the survey. All the way to the left, the darker reddish pinkish color is excellent health. All the way to the right is poor health. The big blue box in the middle is average. And so on the top, we have all the respondents. On the bottom, we have people making under $80,000. And you can see what happens to the big blue box. It jumps by 13 points. And so, again, it's a correlation. But what is really interesting about this to me is that this is not their actual health. We don't have access to their health records as much as we want to. This is their own perception of their own health. And we see such great disparity between people who are high earners, low earners, highly educated, and not as educated. So something to keep in mind as we keep talking. We see these splits as we go through each of these categories. It's going to keep coming up.
And not that any of that's surprising, right? Like, I think that you would be like, yeah, that probably makes sense, like given the stressors of maybe, not having as nice of a job or not having as, high of a salary. Like, it makes sense, I would say.
Definitely does. Let's talk about what the people said when you talked to them.
Yeah, how many people participated in a key informant interview or a focus group? Probably with Emily or maybe Sarah. A couple of people? Okay, good. Isn't Emily a great focus group facilitator? She was spectacular. I listened to every second of those. They were very good. So these are some quotes that we got from the people. largely what we're seeing is, people saying kind of the same thing that our data is seeing. If there are problems for people who have the highest level of access, then for people who have worse, it has to be even worse. So like there was a lot of just general like inconveniences with accessing healthcare, right? Challenges with the referral line, things that all of us experience, getting dropped by your primary, not being flexible with insurances, all that type of stuff. And imagine if you had other barriers, of course, it would be more challenging. We have an aging population. I'm concerned about access to healthcare and their ability to get resources. It's extremely expensive, we know, to get transportation, especially if you have like recurring appointments and you don't drive, you perhaps have to use Uber or there's some other options, but they're all very expensive, require some resources in terms of like technology understanding and things like that. So that's really tricky. And then economic resources play an important role in terms of being able to have access. Of course, we know that as well. The kind of take home message that I have here is it's really hard to not have resources in a well-resourced community. We see that all over. It's not specific to any one community, but if you go to a community that has a lower median household income, you will see food pantries everywhere. You will say, not that you guys have some amazing food resources here, I will say that. You'll see, unemployment offices being right in that town or city. You'll see like a lot of resources flock to the places that need them. And so then the people that may need resources in a well-resourced community that doesn't have a grocery store, doesn't have sufficient sidewalks, it makes it really hard to be poor. And then as the aging population increases, transportation challenges will increase regardless of how many resources that we have. In another community that I'll say, I feel like this has some similarities. They did a focus group with some seniors specifically, and just the description of like the costs for that they spent for transportation for not a long distance was really quite jarring to me. So we're gonna do our first little activity. So for the people who are at home, I'm gonna be in the window. For the people who are at home, you're gonna kind of do this at home. Maybe you have someone to talk to, a pet yourself, maybe a spouse. You're gonna I want you to kind of chew on some of the stuff that we've just talked about. And then for the people in the room, maybe we'll put it on mute for just a few minutes, but love for you to be able to like have a little discussion at your table of this first section. Perfect. The first section on your placemat there of the opportunities that we have listed there. After just about 5 minutes, we're gonna ask you to go through a process of actually ranking those items from top to bottom for us. And you'll do that using your cell phones, and we'll put up a slide that shows you how to do that. And then in that process, if you come up with something, you're like, I feel like, they should know about this thing, or I feel like they missed talking about this thing. Please feel free to write that in that space or on a sticky note or anywhere, because that's information that we'd really love to do a little additional research into. So I will now give you about 5 minutes. If you do have any questions about some of the numbers you heard, or if you have access to anything else, please feel free to call us over, but we'll just give you a couple of minutes just to have a chit chat and talk about those 6 things. Okay, we'll leave this up just for
The Zoomers.
I can just
Yeah.
summarize me.
I guess so.
You want to?
You want?
Sure.
Let's do it.
As far as getting.
That is a lovely place to be.
Really is.
But maybe you're.
Just so you guys have.
And I
No, I was, yeah, you were, yeah. So it's that flag and then like that. I mean, yeah.
South North sidewalks. Inspection center.
Thank you, I thought that.
Just, I want
Maybe
to.
too late to leave any help.
I would tone it down for this one, actually.
I live
This is
in.
the lowest thing.
We have Walgreens, but that doesn't even have like a,
No, I wasn't.
like a CVS, like a little urgent.
Well, I know that the day before you dialed that,
There's not really any sidewalks to get you.
You have to leave town.
an aging population that's growing, and probably number out.
Yeah.
I feel.
Fingers crossed.
I was there. 65 in a couple.
What about you?
Yeah,
No,
that
that's
was.
into this. I'll take a long day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They go by house. For the people who
I
don't.
was getting worried with the amount of people that were there. I was like, oh no. It's gonna be slam dunk.
It makes it.
Yes, I would call that a slam dunk.
Discussion.
And accessing, resources, health resources,
Actually.
groceries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's
Transportation.
a problem that's been overlooked, and I know other communities.
I mean, maybe people don't even know.
Yeah,
about
maybe
that.
there's, that you should write that in and see it like.
You actually are getting.
That's very,
Oh, that's cool.
up there, yeah, at the senior center.
Yeah.
And I see what goes on there, and I'm like, have lunches every single day.
Yeah.
He was just telling me something that's very.
One question.
I remember, I just heard something interesting about that.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal.
Oh, you know, I went to a soap making class. Yeah, and I showed, and the soap making class, the teacher had done a class at the council, and I like, that's so
Isn't that really cool?
Yeah.
They'll come get you for appointments, I mean.
But it's certainly not as expensive or as complicated.
I was
Telling
ready.
you Google it and then just look it up.
I don't bump into things, but
Yeah.
Probably.
she's in the Rotary Club.
Yeah.
I see her quite often. I had to ask her what her name was when she sat down.
For the same amount.
Yeah, so it's.
Well, that'll do it.
You know.
We're gonna lock it in.
Yeah, so that was just my.
So
Yeah,
this is
really
good though. I
interesting.
did learn about Block Island. I didn't.
Well, I'm glad
There you
that,
go.
that feels like in line. I'm excited to see the feeling that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hearing what people said.
We tend to, I think Block Island gets ignored. It's own.
Fix this.
There.
Is the
I'm going-
MR.
Right now, it's-
NWRTA.
That weekend, when they open the shops, 50 people.
No, I mean, I've never.
That's what I think too.
Be there next time.
What can we change that?
Oh,
Biggest effect, yes.
Well, high value
University, like 3 stops or something.
Oh,
yeah.
Say that one life. That will relate to something.
Right on the wall.
Provides you mental health.
We have a place for dinner there, I think.
And
Stress.
I'm on Medicare.
Wait a minute.
rats are.
I also like to take the gap plan that's offered by the state.
What do you guys
and I don't see much of any issues like access to healthcare.
And they don't.
Do you think
The only
this-
thing that I have done is I've.
Yeah, that
You can build something, but you can't make people go with it.
Lost in to Southborough corridor because that was Southborough Valley.
Like so many opportunities.
And we
that
do
makes
it
sense.
sometimes,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
it's set up, yeah.
Like, and then they're messed up, and it's just like,
And we're sitting at some
It does take
tables.
more
like,
time.
come on.
Well, if I go
It's
in
for free.
here from my home to South Route 9
I don't know, like
down, I take my life.
previously we lived in Tewksbury and they did have like
I
a
think
rec
that's by
center
design.
adjacent to
Yeah,
like.
a lot of people that-
Keep the people on the wrong side.
And
of
I
the
felt
tracks
like
away from the-
teens went up on their own terms and there just happened to be like.
all right, I'll
one
give you like
person
maybe 30 more
Splits between
seconds.
the west or the north and south, I don't know.
Actually, Michael, do you want to advance to the
Like,
next slide?
a little more freedom and like the ability to gather themselves instead of
Pick up
saying,
basketball
this is where you're
games.
coming
So
tonight.
as
These are
people
the
are ready,
activities
we
you're
would love for
doing."
you to
very
just
supervised.
Right.
either scan the QR code or go to slido.com. Either one, that's how you can do this little ranking activity. And then if you go to the website, you can enter in that code, which is, I'll just read it, 2299468. I'll read it again a few seconds once more people have had time to go there. And so that will allow you to rank all of those 6 priorities. And you don't have to agree with your group, but kind of, and the order that you click them is the order that you rank them. So you just kind of, and it will let you change it after if you want to. So if you could just take a moment to do that. Is anybody having trouble accessing?
I may be the last person in Greater Boston who doesn't use a cell phone.
Oh my gosh, you can use mine. I've already logged in.
You could write right on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. if you
That's
want.
okay.
Oh, let them vote.
I don't know how to use them.
Well, that's okay. You can just tell me your priorities and I will put them down for you.
Ranking all these 6.
Yeah, what's your favorite?
So,
Favorite's an interesting word choice.
well, your high value, right? You were talking about that.
So you did, oh, did you use the,
Oh,
yeah.
Say,
Android, but I imagine it probably works. It's.
Oh, they don't have an Android.
I'll be ranking them all.
I'll
one
tell you
to-
that.
So for your future reference, if you ever need to do this again,
Okay.
you open your
You're gonna
camera
interpret that the
and
way
then
you
you
want
hover
to.
over the
Oh,
QR
okay.
and then it opens the link right there and then you click, oh, I say that. the savviest.
Extremely high
There we
cost
go.
of living.
So then it opens it in your browser and then
Kind of go hand in hand.
Mental health.
Okay.
it'll come up. So then I think
Relations.
I don't want to
Was that
assume. Then I believe you drag the
Oh, okay.
ones that are here around.
Okay.
But if you also prefer to do it here, we can totally do that as
No,
well.
no, no.
Whatever works easiest.
I know, my
Okay.
thing's still meeting.
So the one that was not real.
Okay.
Yeah, something we did here in, something we heard in focus groups was that, had that changed hands? Was that what it?
No,
So
they were
this is the
thinking
one I
about
was
leaving.
talking about wanted to do.
Client, that-
Mhm. Right.
So then I'm like, all right, let me get it, because you.
Well,
so
yeah.
much-
Yeah, we had heard some feedback about this.
Well, all the issues
It was a very
true.
positive report and saying that.
Violent.
Yeah,
Really.
So they're on here and
that's great.
Excellent.
Cheap.
That may be, that's an interesting.
We write some of these things on here. I want to make sure we don't forget them. Well,
To what extent?
Those pens take a while to start.
I know. Sorry for the brand new pen.
We're getting freedom of
Sorry.
representation.
We're getting what next year?
Freedom of
So I want to start now.
Yeah,
so-
now.
Oh,
By Reliant.
I wonder if they have usage
They might
data.
have been in the car overnight and then thus.
No, I
Yeah.
don't know. Well,
I would say it's gone back.
I've actually.
Challenge.
I can have my.
Yeah.
partners.
It's great, and a lot of this is just, this is just people's perception. It doesn't mean it's necessarily reality, but it's like, okay, what things do people, so if it's, you know, if the
We've
people report
experimented.
things, the answer might be more information, not a change in the infrastructure itself, you know?
That's like also there like people.
All right, is anybody still voting?
There's tasks so soon.
All right, Michael, let's do it.
Right there.
Reminded me to say something, then I can.
Okay, all right.
Next thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right, I'll say hit us high. All right, I feel like you all agreed with what we saw in the community survey, which is great. I'm assuming you all took it. I don't think Emily would have let you in the building if you didn't, but yeah, that's really interesting to see. And I heard a lot of great conversation just kind of about like, is it that we don't have this thing, or is it that people don't know we have this thing, or the sort of other side of it is like, what's the ROI of some of these things? Some things are going to be a lot bigger investment with a lot more challenge.
ROI means return on investment.
Thank you, Emily. You're welcome. All right, we're gonna use that data in our report. Thank you. You're now part of it. So just some general recommendations. Make food more accessible. So we heard a lot of amazing things about the food pantries, the fridges, the collaboration between the churches is amazing. Apparently Sarah's getting deliveries during this meeting of food to her house. So there's just, there's a lot of great things happening in the absence of a grocery store or maybe a Costco. It's not that Costco is the premier option for people on a limited budget, but it is. Yeah.
So do you know the news?
Okay, that was my little cheeky. Sorry, sir. I can keep up on your special town meeting. I read Michael the whole report on the way here, so wonderful. Southborough definitely has the stuff, but in general, people seem a little bit unsure of where, right? So like, we kept kind of hearing this, is the senior center only for seniors, or can other people go to that type of thing? Or, you know, do I have to be part of the church to volunteer at the food pantry? Or, you know, kind of what places could exist? And some of the things that were talked about in the groups about the community spaces and like, you know, building a community rec center or something like that. Sometimes it could just be utilizing your existing spaces in like more creative ways. Sometimes, you know, the senior center could be totally available in the evenings, or, you know, even a building like this is like gorgeous. So just thinking about how you can do some things, you know, find the ways to attract the people without necessarily having this like massive investment in it. And we'll get to this later, but having some substance-free spaces for young people, very important. Places that you can kind of, it's not just for young people, but for all people. I mean, there's like such a movement towards being really welcoming to people who would prefer not to consume alcohol. There's, you know, every restaurant is kind of on the mocktail bandwagon. So I think in terms of being healthy with substances, I think there's also a lot of opportunity there as well. And then housing is really hard. You have to put a lot of resources into it to make it work. I skipped the walkability study. I'll go back to that one. We heard time and time again how difficult it is to age in Southborough because real estate is really expensive. It's hard to downsize. And I think there were some really good comments in the room just about how, like, even if you downsize, like, you could sell your house and get something kind of a similar size for the same price. And that makes it really difficult to, like, make those choices as you age. And then back up to the walkability study. We heard a lot about sidewalks and, you know, where different buildings are located and how close or far they are from each other. That's a very common, you know, it's the most common thing in the suburbs. Like every community health assessment is going to have that thing on there. And it's an ongoing something that, you know, everyone's going to have to kind of work on to have safe streets and places where people can recreate and things like that. So it's always good to look at someone who's an expert in walking. And if you've ever seen like a walking consultant, they are really interesting folks. They have a lot of knowledge about sidewalks and how thick the grass should be to make people want to walk and all that kind of stuff. So I would say probably not our areas of expertise, but maybe someday. All right, we're going to move on to substance use and risk factors, and Michael will bear the bad news.
Thank you. That was a really good transition. So overall, substance use was really not identified as a primary concern in the way that we thought it might when we talked to whether it was our key informants, survey respondents, whatever it may be. That doesn't mean it's not important. That doesn't mean it's not affecting the town. It affects every town. And so we feel like it was still important for us to dig into a little bit, but it was just notable that it just wasn't ranked very highly. It wasn't mentioned as often as some of these other topics that we've brought up. So what we do know is that we work with the Encompass Coalition and we've been involved with some of their projects. And so we know from looking at that data over a number of years that kids at Algonquin use alcohol more often than their peers around like the Metro West region. And actually up until 2023, for about a decade prior, they used substances more than their peers just about across the board, whether it be marijuana, cigarettes, vapor products. It was just recently that those all kind of leveled out and they came back to the mean, but alcohol is still outpacing the rest of the area. And we'll dig into that a little more in a slide or two. Stigma is something that we're going to talk about in this section and the next section and probably the last section too. That one came up a lot. It's important in a negative way, obviously, because for two reasons. One, it prevents people from accessing care because they're afraid of what people might think if they're seen walking into a clinic or asking for help. The other thing is that stigma prevents people who do access care from then talking about it. And if you're not talking about the care you access, it makes it hard for people to know that it's there. And so it sort of creates this self-fulfilling prophecy where if it doesn't get talked about, the stigma just gets reinforced, and it sort of stays really at this low level that's sort of under the carpet, right? So stigma is something that's going to come up again and again as we talk through this. Prevention programming is happening in silos. I know Youth and Family Services is doing prevention work. Encompass does prevention work. There's the schools. There's different community organizations. They're all doing these things, but maybe not doing them together is what we've heard. You have sort of these very segmented groups or fragmented groups doing different work, but not collaborating the way that they could be. And then finally, we're back to those community spaces again, as Kendall just said, creating spaces that are substance free for people is important for a number of reasons, but bringing people together, helping them develop positive relationships, that's substance use prevention 101, right? So how did we get here? We asked people what they thought the main driver of substance use was in Southborough, and no surprise, 75% of people said mental health is driving substance use. Or is substance use driving mental health? We've got kind of a chicken and an egg.
Myself there. Almost said it caused it.
I'm saying they said it caused it. But we're really not sure what comes first, and really it doesn't matter what comes first, but there's a correlation there probably, right? And it's interesting, 85% of female respondents also chose mental health. So there are another gender gap. that we saw. Another correlation that's gonna keep recurring is education and income. People with lower educational attainment and lower incomes were more likely to have experienced or been affected by a substance use issue, either themselves or someone in their home, versus people with higher incomes or higher educational attainment. When asked about what the biggest barrier to substance use care was, 66% of people said stigma. The next closest thing was judgment at like 58%, and nothing else was even in the ballpark. It's those two things that are preventing people from accessing the care that they need. This was interesting that people with higher incomes were more likely to say that stigma was an issue and a barrier. And I see a lot of suddenly people are nodding.
Oh, I was nodding.
You were nodding?
Yeah.
Well,
You
you've
don't get someone work?
seen this before.
Well, I know. I think
But they didn't see it before. They're nodding. That's much more important.
Yeah.
So
they're an agreeable bunch.
nevertheless. And then finally, 44% of our survey takers said lack of awareness was a big barrier to care. And that again ties itself back to talking about silos, coordination and collaboration between departments. You can't access something if you don't know that it's there, right? Don't worry too much about the lines. I'll tell you what the lines are. This is a graph of 13 years of high school substance use self-reported by Algonquin teens, I guess, students. The big takeaways here are that things are going down. They have been going down for a while. Overall, you see some little bumps in the road, but generally speaking, use of all these substances is trending downward. That's not just true here. That's true in pretty much every community that we work with, and I think across the state as well. And that's because people are doing really good prevention work. That big like red bump in the middle there, that's vapor products. That's when they were really, really cool. And there was a like remarkably quick and dynamic response from lawmakers and from substance use coalitions and from people like Sarah and Emily, and those numbers came down really, really quick. The pandemic also helped that a little bit, but we won't talk about the pandemic today.
Pandemic was really helpful when it came to youth substance use.
Yeah, I guess that just, yeah, the smallest of silver linings. Yeah. Something to just remind you of too, I said before, Algonquin students are using alcohol at a higher rate than their peers. 24% have used in the past 30 days versus 21% across the region. It's 28% for female students. We do see female students in a lot of towns using more than male students, and that's for all substances, not just alcohol. And then something we also do is we look at parent perception about youth substance use, and what we have found in this community in particular is that parents are a little more laid back and a little more permissive of underage drinking here than in other communities that we've compared them to. 29% of kids say they get alcohol from people age 21 plus. That doesn't mean it's a parent, but it could be an older sibling, an older friend, someone in college. And then we have 33% of parents think that other parents turn a blind eye to underage drinking and alcohol use in town, which is just interesting to see how parents perceive other parents. And it's sort of this complicated web of pointing
It almost
fingers.
goes back to the stigma piece, right? Like if parents aren't talking to each other about their household rules around alcohol, it's almost like this, it becomes unspoken and it gets swept under the rug. And then it's like, they're relying on their child to say, well, so-and-so's mom lets us drink in the basement. Like, and so everybody's doing it. And then now parents are relying. I mean, I'm sure most parents are not going to take their teens' advice on stuff, but it does apply a certain level of pressure for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a caveat, we are aware this is a regional school district. This data is regional. It's not, entirely clear how we can pull out just the Southborough youth, but because the towns are so closely linked socially and in many other ways, it is certainly still relevant.
But the parent survey data was Southborough specific.
That's true.
Yeah.
Kendall, what did the people say?
Okay, so both these quotes, I won't read them, you can read them if you want, but both these quotes are about prevention and protective factors. And so you might notice that Michael and I are a little passionate about this type of thing. So although substance use is maybe not the top concern in the community of Southborough, And although substance use is overall low and trending lower among young people, which we have this just amazing data set of young people's risky behaviors, which comes from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, which has been done. I think you have 13 years of data. The CDC has been doing that survey since 1990. So there's lots of data to compare to here. It's a very reliable source of information. So something that is very important is that young people feel that it is normal and typical not to use substances. Young people who believe that are less likely to use and are less likely to develop addictions. The young person's developing brain is not finished until they're 25. You guys are all youth commission type people, so I'm assuming that you know that, but just in case, even very casual use of substances under age 25 does increase the risk for addiction kind of exponentially. So that's why it's so important to have some prevention efforts. And we were really happy to see people kind of picking that out and highlighting it during their key informant interviews. So that's something to always keep your eye on, right? Just because that number is low doesn't mean it's going to stay low. Electronic vapor products had their moment and people responded and they went down. And I don't know if you've heard of Zins or nicotine pouches, but that's having its moment now. So there's lots of, there's always new and dangerous substances out there. And then there's our old favorites like alcohol and marijuana, but it's just something that is really important to not look away from. It can always spike up and it does have lifelong impacts for you. All right. So just a couple other little statistics as you kind of go into your brief discussion on this. Only 15% of the residents indicated that substance use was a top issue. We consider this an issue in itself, right? Even if there is not some type of fentanyl epidemic happening in your community, it is something, like I said, that the eye should always be on the ball when it comes to, substance misuse and substance use when it comes to young people. Michael already said this, the current alcohol use rates, 24% of high schoolers have used in the past 30 days, 28% of our female students. All right, and then, like Michael said, Southborough parents are a little bit more permissive. So looking at this data, if you want to take 3 or 4 minutes just to have a conversation about it, anything that sticks out to you, and then we'll just do a quick vote.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. A quick vote. 2 minutes. I know. Just pick your favorites. Yeah.
What's this with the silos?
Yeah.
I mean, am I missing something here or?
Like, do you want me to explain why we
It says
consider?
in silos and I've seen it like in silos.
You mean like, what do we actually mean by it? Yeah, like things are, that's a great question. That's a really good
I was thinking of,
It's such jargony. Yeah, so it's
In the surrounding town.
So it's, it literally just, every time I told things are happening next to each other and not interconnected with each other, so like, there's just. That's a good question.
Every time I'm like, it's my job as your mother to tell you.
It's just a wash.
The ones they told that, and I
A key
don't know.
point that I think that was.
These days are not drinking and driving, and he doesn't see it, which is a great thing.
High school girls.
That's my
We
surprise.
have seen some more of that, that's feel like parents will say, you know what?
Back in my.
If you're not driving, that's better than nothing. So you guys can come over here if you want to
I
have.
know, but what I mean is there.
Oh.
And their rates
And
of
if you're gonna stay
mental
here,
health concerns are much higher.
that's better than you partying in the woods driving home. Right? So there's like this compromise happening almost. I don't know what the right term is.
Kids predominantly young women.
Clearly, prevention.
Well, absolutely, yeah, that's true.
That's when you're using them.
I know, but as a. He's trying to. Sort of see.
Usually you'll be ready for the next section.
Oh, I can't wait. I don't know
So
where we had-
how many came
And we're St. John's.
And she told me that the person,
Yeah, I think that's the highlight of the.
but she heard that there.
Michael, do you want to put us to the next slide so that when people feel ready, they can.
Absolutely. Vote away when you're ready.
When you're ready.
You're right.
Is St. John's private?
Yes.
Once again, they may also not have allowed them to collect data.
And it should, if you're on the same, you don't have to necessarily scan it again. If you're on the, it should just go to the next page.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Did you talk to, excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry.
did you talk to people at St. John's?
And that's
And ask them-
Emily, your group, your key informant in your group at the church, which church was that?
No, St. John's is a boys' school, a troop group. They're
Oh.
have kids there and they have kids at Assabet.
Yeah. I do not know if they do a youth risk behavior survey. They don't participate in the Metro West adolescent.
Did you try and talk to St. Mark?
The church.
No, St. Mark.
When are we getting to the church?
St. Mark's, I know, it's not affiliated with the church, but St. Mark's is a private high school just up the road here.
No, I don't think we talked to anyone.
Okay.
No, we sent them other things related to this, about the survey and promoting the survey, but we didn't do a focus group with them.
Got some
And we're
surveys.
talking about the youth focus group at the church?
I'm not.
She thought we were.
No. St. Mark's.
Yeah, I know. I just confirmed that we're not talking about the church.
Did you talk to anybody about Strawberry?
The school?
Yeah.
Emily, you're gonna have to, what's the question? He said, did you talk to anyone at
Drug
Strawberry?
use and alcohol use at Strawberry.
Oh, we do have that data. We didn't include that in here, but we do have it.
Is it minimal or?
Very.
Okay.
I know, I
Yes.
can focus on.
Yeah, it was really hard
But-
we really tried to get, youth focus groups. It's hard to nail the kids down in one space. It's hard to coordinate because, if you go through the schools, so there's like a lot more red tape with, getting permission from understanding, like, you don't want to start going into schools. But, it's hard to coordinate 8 kids with all of their, we really did try. We went through, St. Matthew's Church.
That was it.
Yeah,
the one.
Yeah, we thought we had struck gold, but the youth pastor that I worked with misunderstood that the kids needed to be from Southborough. He has a youth group, but none of the kids that when I got there, we were just talking. I was like, oh, whereabouts in Southborough do you guys live? And they none of them actually lived in Southborough, which was tough. But it was nice to talk to them. And we ended up, they were doing it for community service, so I did speak with them, and even though they're not in Southborough, it's still a little reflective of teens in the community. It's not that.
So when you're talking about the Algonquin, you're talking about the the stats that you're getting from Algonquin. Is it because you went into Algonquin?
No, this is from, correct me if I'm wrong, the larger survey.
Yeah, this is from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey. So it's a survey done every other year at Algonquin and at the middle school as well.
Okay, because what I'm asking is, Assabet Valley Regional High School has families from Southborough there.
Yeah, so they do I believe they also participate, but we can't, like, the same thing with Algonquin, we can't tease out the Southborough people specifically, so we just chose the largest possible group to kind of work with.
That's
Yeah,
very
yeah, I think, I apologize, all the same, I really took a turn at the beginning there, but I'm on the same page with you. And just for anybody that didn't hear, we do have that middle school data as well, and it is extremely minimal in terms of any type of use from the middle schoolers.
We could and have done an hour on just the high school
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So if you want to do that sometime.
If you want that presentation, we'll send it over. Okay, cool. All right, good. We hit a nerve with the high school data. That's good. All right, let's move along, Michael. I don't want to. We will not be keeping people late. That's one thing we won't be doing.
No, our next voting is going to be rapid, like lightning round.
No, it's mental health.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna.
That's you.
Yeah, okay, why would I do that? All right, so just some of the recommendations here is focus on intersectionality. So someone points out that silos is like maybe a jargony term here, but just in case anyone is not familiar with public health mumbo jumbo, is silos would be kind of, we're all operating independently and we're not necessarily connecting what we're doing from one thing to another. So intersectionality, kind of the same idea. We're not treating mental health and substance use differently, but we are treating them as something that has some intersectionality with it as well. And definitely just pointing towards a focus towards our young people. Youth are twice as likely to use substances if they're experiencing depression. many people on your survey were concerned about mental health, but few expressed concern about substance use. In terms of the reducing stigma, that's of course very important so that people feel comfortable being able to access services. That could be by having some discrete services. We heard wonderful things in the focus group of the services provided by Southborough Youth and Family Services and how they've really helped people. Adults with serious mental illness are 3 to 4 times more likely to use substances. So these two things are inextricably linked. So as we get to the next section, it's important to remember that it's so connected to this section as well. Educating the community, there's some really incredible models out there to be able to educate the community, to be able to recognize the signs of substance use, to cope with behavioral health challenges, to look at kind of the different ways that different people experience substances and looking at the different ways that you can support people. And then having techniques and making referrals known to each other, right? So some of the things that we heard was, I really know what to do when I have, we heard this from people who worked in town. If I experience a client or a resident that has a mental health issue, I know to call Sarah. So I know what to do. But that's not formal, right? That's not like every time this happens, every one of my staff is going to do X, Y, and Z. And we want to move more towards having these like systems in place that make sure, we'll talk about this more later, but making sure that we have those systems in place that allows consistency across the experience. And then letting youth lead the way. Youth are using substances less than ever. They have a very promising view. If we look at some of the other data around youth, youth have a very promising view of substances. Youth are more accepting than ever of other people choosing not to use. Youth are more supportive of each other when they say, no, I really don't want to do that. For better or for worse, actually, there's situations where that's not great, but it's something that's been showing up in the data more and more, is that young people are just willing to let each other live their life and not really have judgments if they choose not to do what they perceive as like the cool thing or the in thing to do. They also have a really amazing take on mental health and asking for support and expressing their challenges. And so I think that kind of brings us nicely into the next section. Okay.
So mental health, unlike substance use, mental health was talked about constantly during this endeavor. Key informants, focus groups, didn't matter. We heard it over and over and over again, especially how the logistics of accessing care was very hard, whether it's the availability of providers or wait lists or insurance issues. This is not a Southborough specific issue. This is happening everywhere. There's been, since the pandemic, I hate to say it, but since the pandemic, there's been a lot of coverage and a lot of research done on how difficult it is to find mental health care, especially for youth. There is this just complete unbalance of supply and demand. And it's a difficult thing to rectify, but it's definitely a top issue and it's top of mind for the people that we talk to. There's a lack of multilingual, multicultural providers. Kendall talked about the number of foreign-born residents and people speaking other languages beside English in Southborough. Even though people are using English as their second language and using it well, they may not want to or be able to access those specific types of care in a culturally responsive way in English. They might just need that extra layer of comfort. And so having more of those types of providers is important. Stigma, again, same with substance use, the stigma of asking for help, the stigma of admitting that you sought help or accessed it in the first place, sort of keeps the conversation low, and we need to raise it up as the youth do, right? And then these next three, they're not exactly the same thing, but I'm going to lump them together because they're driven by a lot of the same factors. They lead to a lot of the same outcomes. We talk again about the silos. The silos transcend, as in case you haven't noticed, the silos are across all the categories. People just, it's not just that they don't know how to get the help they need. They don't even know what help might be available to them. It's like this tree falling in the forest. They don't know what's there. They didn't hear the tree fall, so they don't know that it fell. They're we're gonna recommend at the end, but there's gotta be a more concerted effort to coordinate and collaborate and get some of these services working together in a more cohesive way. And I think that's probably one of the easier things to fix, honestly, and maybe one of the more impactful as well. So the data from the survey, we had 204 of the 345. That's not true because it's multiple. So you can select multiple, but
No, that's right, that's right.
204 people said that counseling services was like the #1 mental health need in the town. 199 chose child services as the most needed mental health service in town. Those are not a surprise. That's sort of what we were expecting. 54% said that they would know how to access mental health services if they needed it. That's more than half, but it also means that like almost half don't know how to access those services if they needed them.
And a
So-
certain percentage has had to access them, so they are automatically in that portion.
They are automatically in that portion, and that number is that's a nice segue. Thank you. So we had 9% of the survey takers tell us that they were unable to access care when they needed it. And that 9% is a little misleading because when we pull out the people who said that they did need care over here on camera, over here, 33% of them, so 1 in 3 people who needed care and sought it could not access it. That's what they're telling us, and that's too many. I think we'd all agree. This is a quick rundown of sort of how the distribution went across all the choices when people were asked what was the most needed mental health service. I think what's sort of interesting here is the stress management one, 164, and support groups 174, because we also heard a lot of people talk about the stress. The lights are on.
Yeah, police call.
Yeah.
It goes red. I'm monitoring, don't worry.
Stay alert, people. So stress management support groups, people talked a lot about how parenting, caregiving, financial pressures, work-life balance were sort of the main stressors in their life in this survey. And so when you think about mental health, we sort of jump to that intensive clinical therapy with a diagnosis and medication and psychologists and all, and that's not always what mental health needs to be. So and we'll talk about it later, but there's other opportunities to address this in more of a low barrier, supportive type of way where we're teaching, we're coaching, we're talking about coping skills as opposed to a more intensive traditional therapy. And Kendall, what did the people say?
All right, I'm gonna leave this on the screen. I'm not gonna read each one of them, but this is an area where we actually did hear some really positive things. Southborough Youth and Family Services, we had multiple focus groups, more than one, where someone said, thank goodness for Southborough Youth and Family Services. They provided, bridge care when we really needed it. They provided us, with some counseling when we needed it. And then in that same focus group, someone said, what do they do? And so we had this sort of like dichotomy of like people who said this is an amazing service the town has and a whole bunch of people who didn't know that service existed. So we think that's like a really promising, amazing way that we might be able to make a change really quickly in terms of high value change. We'd heard some hit or miss feedback with the existing resources like the interface referral line. Some people said depending on how you got it was good, really, really good, and then someone was not so good, and I put it on the research. It just kind of was a mix. So just kind of something interesting to keep. And then early on, Michael did say like the mental health data is kind of conflicting because certainly we know people are concerned about it. Certainly, people feel that way. And then when we go back to that awesome data set that we have of high schoolers, they have had in the past 2 years a 10% drop in feeling that life is very stressful. They've had a 5% drop in depression and a 7% drop in suicidal ideation. So the numbers are conflicting, and that's actually really typical. It's not like Southborough specific, but young people kind of coming out of the pandemic has kind of started to develop a little bit more resiliency. And so like another thing that we hear a lot too is like a few years ago when we were doing these types of things, all we could hear about was there's no beds, nobody can get any type of inpatient care. And the more we hear recently is that there are starting to be a little bit more provider access. There is starting to be a little bit more available beds for people who need inpatient care. So it doesn't mean it's not the biggest concern. It can absolutely be the biggest concern. And more resources are becoming available, and more is happening in that area. All right, and then just right now, we're gonna go straight into 2 minutes of talk and 1 second of voting, and then we will move on. But I would be curious to hear if you have any other feedback on mental health as well.
And just as a time check, I believe it is 7:47.
I keep forgetting that. Yeah,
So
sorry, I didn't know if you had any.
I mean, the thing I was
maybe
thinking
30
about
seconds of
is
talk.
our first this week is
Question.
where do we need to see?
Yeah,
I just
Could you,
Like where this like we keep trying to.
I know you, I know.
I have a lot.
Still people are saying, I don't know who to call, I don't know.
Probably do survey data.
Actually, there's.
Take a look at it.
There's two or
In our
200 or more
server
people
as well.
involved in projects, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
and working, citizens volunteering, working, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. There's is Southborough well knit
Right,
together,
yeah.
things like that, or
Yeah.
less, or?
So I think that it's interesting. So we did talk to some of those groups. And
It's not.
it's, on the one hand, it's great that there's all these opportunities to be involved in all these different committees, organizations, and whether it's community service or just like for social reasons, but it felt like for such a small town,
Yeah.
there's so many different groups,
Yeah.
and none of them talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I mean, certainly,
you know,
yeah,
Do you feel like everyone's talking, or do you feel like you're isolated?
Not across a lot of these groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you
I
know,
mean, I guess one way that they recommend in that direction is to do.
I
Yeah,
serve
people,
on
I know
a
it's
number
a
of
higher income.
town committees, so I
Yes,
get.
of course, we're
involved.
traveling. Yeah, yeah.
To bridge that.
That's all free.
But.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
But then
I
there's
see at a
stigma
pumpkin
too, I'm
school.
sure there's a lot.
Yeah, we'll pull out what you have.
And
Like,
the first time we actually did it in conjunction with the Friends of the Library.
Oh,
Cause I see
You go to the
people
next slide.
share and
And
care.
actually, some people didn't like it.
People will-
I thought that was just-
Yeah.
No, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens is that the friends of Rotary people came and the friends of the friends came and we got to
Yeah.
know each other.
Yeah.
Well, I know, I know why.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing is we conducted
Yeah, of
a food
course.
truck festival, which made you.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of votes, great. And
Right.
there's
Ask
a
a
question
lot of
and
people
I
from
am-
the whole level.
Right,
So
and
I'm
it's
also
okay
surprised
to not
that
put your name on it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
just-
yeah.
yes.
I was shocked to see.
Oh, it's-
Yeah.
Kids
Or
running
like
around.
stuff, yeah.
Their parents come
Yeah.
back, shoo them out the door.
I was like,
Yeah.
3 hours later, I was like, yeah.
You know, I think.
I was
one
back
of
and I was
the
like,
things
yeah.
that- the other thing that
Absolutely,
Rotary
everybody
is,
agrees.
you know, now is,
Yeah.
you know, with COVID,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think
of
that's a great one to
kind of
be.
left this group. And it's
Yeah, thank you
hard
so
to
much.
put them
We'll-
back
we'll
together.
take
I
this,
think
but-
they're beginning to come back
Read my
together.
scribble.
I heard that.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Talk to the.
All right, make sure you're voting
to
for the comments that will.
Yeah.
And they said
See,
that
that's
they
another- that's
almost,
another-
almost quoted exactly.
Oh, just friends in general. I know. we
Well,
get-
you, I think, I don't know, at least I thought you never switched together.
Right, and like Rec and you guys will be raising.
We're
some
merging
funds.
some of the.
Yeah.
Well, this is good, yeah, I'm glad.
Like so much looking for
Much
money.
better.
Oh, what are you already showing it?
I am, because I was,
Excited.
I got trigger happy. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, we could watch it in real time.
That's okay, we can. I actually, I don't know.
Silos.
Yeah, silos.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, there's a lot
Like,
of
We'll find out.
issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not serious, but probably got.
All right, while you're getting your last vote in, I will, I'm gonna just start talking about the recommendations here. So recommendations around mental health support is focusing on prevention. So figuring out how to market the existing resources, the amazing work of Southborough Youth and Family Services. You do have these great, your website has like these amazing resources listed on them, depending on the level of severity of the issue. And so being able to make sure people know about that would be really helpful. Focusing on service coordination. This one really comes down to having a formal referral system, not two people that know each other that could win the lottery and leave Southborough, right? So having something formal to say that we work together and when this happens, this is the next steps. I mentioned that before, but we did a focus group with some parents of children that had mental and behavioral health concerns. And one thing we heard is that the crisis response often escalated that problem for them, right? So the lights and the sirens, and then maybe not necessarily having the tools to be able to refer people in the correct way. wasn't always the best option in that moment, although it was the only option in that moment. So being able to utilize the resources that exist in the community will be really important. That's developing a crisis protocol. And then advancing low barrier options, like you have bridge counseling already, but any more that you can do with that. Being able to triage lower risk mental health needs. How do we get more people utilizing these services and then referred out to the place that they ultimately need to be? There was some great discussion at the table. I was hearing some other things that we need to make sure that are included in this as well, like relationship violence or of any sort, right? Not just physical, but emotional, financial, all those types of things. And just making sure that people have access to the support that they need. So we will have a lot to say, but please write down anything that we forgot in your little notes and we will take those back with us.
Last one.
Last one.
This is the point in the show where you're gonna say, oh my God, he's talking about that again. So I'm gonna go kind of fast and it's 7:52. But you've heard all these before already because they're starting to pile up and we're starting to hear the same things from people over and over and over and over again. I'm not even gonna read them all to you, but I do want to say that there are some really simple, low cost, low effort solutions, just like I heard 30 seconds ago about the Rotary Club inviting the Friends of the Library to the Halloween
Pumpkin stroll.
Oh,
just hey, come on the stroll, guys. I mean, that's right there. That's a community space, that's coordination, that's getting people together, breaking down social isolation, getting the kids off their phones. We solved like 8 problems with just one invitation right there. So it's not that big of a, you break it up into little chunks like that before you know it. We've made a lot of progress. Some of the data behind the health access that we thought was interesting. 39% of our survey takers said that they thought it was very easy to access health services, and we'll look at a little more about who said what and why on the next slide. 33% said the biggest barrier to accessing any type of health service is wait times. 26% said limited providers. That's not unexpected in a small town that doesn't have the health infrastructure right here. And as I said before, 136 people chose work-life balance as a primary stressor. A lot of people said parenting, fiscal, economic issues as primary stressors. So these are the things on people's minds. It's no surprise. This is a town where I'm guessing you need 2 incomes to support a household with the kids, and there's just a lot of people being pulled in different directions. And so again, when we talk about mental health, that's also a part of what we should be talking about. So the health access and social issues, I thought this was kind of interesting. There's a bit of an age gap because there's not really a gap between with race or gender or in earners or education here. It's really about age for this one. On the top, you'll see the ease of accessing health services for survey takers age 45 plus. On the bottom, it's responders under age 45, all the way to the left is very easy, all the way to the right is very difficult. The big blue box is somewhat difficult, and you're seeing that's where the big jump is, goes from 14% to 29% for the younger groups. And frankly, we argue a lot, but we argued about this and we weren't really sure, and we're curious if you want to write us a note on why you think that is. We thought maybe is it parents who can't find services for their kids? Are there insurance issues? Do older adults maybe have just a little more time to hunt down these services that they need during working hours? Is there something else entirely that we're missing? We weren't sure why this kind of panned out this way. We had a lot of respondents in both of those categories, so the data is good. It's just we were stumped on that. So if
somebody knows the answer, write that one down because we don't know.
Give us a sticky.
Usually we have 3 to 5 hypotheses at any given. I don't got any on that one.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
I wonder if it's parents with young kids. Just because when your kids tend to get sick, they have an appointment and then they're sick and you have to reschedule it. And they say, okay, we'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or during school hours and you can't get an appointment.
Yeah.
You're
True.
oh, they're not that sick. They can't miss
Hours and
Right.
schedules.
It's a good point. Yeah.
So I know we're moving through this section quick, but Kendall's now going to tell you about what the people said.
Yeah, so what the people said is, I was glad to see some call out of the language and communication barriers that still exist. There's physical and economic barriers. We were talking about, cultural barriers. People perceive health and wellness differently. There actually were some in that first slide when we asked people how their health was, there was actually some kind of different ratings amongst different race category identifications. So it's important to remember that not everyone views health, wellness the same exact way. Not everyone treats healthcare the same exact way. So it's really helpful to kind of call that out and just have a think about it. We definitely heard that, of course, this is very common that people are uncomfortable going to food pantries, especially like if it is community run and you're seeing people from your church while you're trying to pick up your food bag and all that type of stuff. And then someone mentioned how difficult it was just to get care. We also heard, in the mental health section, how people had to wait months for a neuropsych assessment, especially for their kids. It's really hard to get mental health care for kids, just in terms of providers that are willing to serve them. Your community is safe, but another community I was working in, I interviewed several mental health providers who said, I don't want to work with kids. I don't like working with kids. And they really kind of maybe understand why there might not be enough providers to work with young people. So it's interesting to see as well. All right, moving to next slide. Maybe? Okay. Just looking at these, let's not do discussion. Let's just have a think, maybe have a vote, if you wouldn't mind. I also want to just shout out the Zoom people. I think it's been 10 since the beginning and they've stuck with it. So I do appreciate that. New battery, yeah, so if you want to just get a vote on that very last bit, that would be really helpful to us. And then we will just do a very quick wrap up. As you all are making your votes, I'm going to tell you some of our recommendations in here. This is where you are going to hear some really repetitive stuff. Leveraging underutilized spaces. You need more places to make things happen. And like I said, that doesn't mean constructing a state-of-the-art world-class facility, although that would be lovely. But just utilizing the spaces that you do have in creative ways, offering multi-generational programming, using public spaces, schools, churches, all that type of stuff. Looking at the way your town departments are branded and named, the communication styles that you're using. It sometimes is difficult to know that youth and family services might provide mental health support. For example, if I was to pick on the people in this room, and we hear that a lot. It's very common. It's not an uncommon situation at all, or a Southborough specific thing. Developing a centralized directory and maybe a way to access that directory. Sarah's going to regret it, but we did have a little conversation about AI and whether or not, could an agent on the Southborough website help you navigate all of the town services and things like that. There's a lot of technology opportunity coming up ahead of us. So perhaps that's an opportunity there. And then being able to translate that into multiple languages would be really helpful, because we do have data on the top languages in your community, of course. Establishing some cross-sector meetings. That's how we're going to break down our silos, is we're going to all sit in a room together. I think one of the earliest meetings Michael and I attended together before we really knew each other was a meeting of a bunch of different departments all coming together, and it was extremely helpful to say, here's what's going on in my department, here's a struggle I'm having, and then having people say, oh, wait, have you talked to this person? And kind of do that networking in a more formal way. So quarterly, monthly, however it may look. Zoom makes it easier, but just having those cross-sector meetings, and it doesn't just have to be town staff. It can be nonprofits, it could be the churches, it could be the schools, it can, everybody can be involved in something like that. And then improving transportation by expanding. I heard about the MWRTA and the dial-a-ride that does exist there, that's adding 3 new lines. So it sounds like you're well on your way with this recommendation already. Great job to everybody. So that's our sort of last section there. We distilled all 22 opportunities into 5 main things. You don't have to do 22 things, okay? Community infrastructure, grocery stores, health centers, common places to gather, creative use of facilities, any type of community infrastructure is going to benefit you positively. Affordability, looking at affordable housing for seniors especially, I think that's a really great opportunity. You know, someone mentioned in this room tonight, having some budgeting education, some financial education might be really helpful for some people, especially young people. Having that transportation and mobility conversation, bike paths, sidewalks, you know, making sure people know about the resources that do exist in terms of dial-a-ride and bus lines and things like that, making sure people know how to use them, making sure people who don't speak English know how to use them, things like that. And then, of course, mental health. I think the pumpkin stroll is a great example of pulling people together and getting people out of, you know, their social isolation. I think at the beginning, we were just talking about what we did for Halloween, and I was saying how I was like pretty sure I was going to do absolutely nothing, and I was going to just take the lights off and sit inside my house alone. And at the last second, I decided to go out, and I did. You know what? I felt so much better. I was really happy. So I think it does. There's something to be said for that sort of grassroots collaboration and impact that has. And then finally, the silos. The lack of coordination, not by lack of trying, not by lack of effort or concern or care, but the lack of coordination between town departments and their stakeholders creates inefficiencies, or at least inconsistent experiences. Someone might get the best experience, and then someone who's newer might not have the exact referral to make or know exactly what to do. So it's a little bit hit or miss in that way. We want things to be consistent for our community. You want to talk about this later, or you want me to?
No, because it is 8:03, and because this is just this is all the recommendations on one page, which are also right in front of you on your lovely placemats, which you could eat off of, really. So that's just for summary's sake. And if you have any questions, again, I know we're just over time, but happy to have a conversation either with the group or sidebar afterwards. We'll stick around. Or nothing. We can also go.
I don't know if there's a Zoom chat too, but if people online do have questions, feel free to use it if it exists. And then just the placemats, if you wrote on it, can you leave it? But if you want to take one, you're welcome to take one. Michael and I don't have a ton of use for them in our free time, but
There are extra blank ones for sure.
yeah, they're blank ones.
You want to frame it, like laminate, whatever you think.
That'd be a big one. Sarah, do you have any closing or? I don't need to be on.
No, that's okay. No, I just want to thank everybody again. This is a presentation of the findings, but our conversation tonight will be included in the final report. We're not going to tie it back to anyone in particular, so don't worry. But I appreciate everybody being here, and those of you who are online attending for your participation also. And we're just excited. I think these recommendations are really helpful in ensuring that we're doing our best by Southborough's residents. That's it. And thank you to Michael and Kendall for their presentation this evening and bringing so much energy to this project. We really appreciate it.
Southborough's easy to work with.
All right.
We do have to adjourn
No.
the youth commission meeting. I think you could probably
Can we
do it
just
from
do
there.
that from here?
Yes.
Okay.
To adjourn. That's it.
I second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Just everybody.